Beer brats and cheese, pretty much Wisconsin in 3 words.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get us started here.
Did you just post something on Facebook?
Yeah, I just clicked the live, so I went live. I usually like to start the live before, and then I can go back and trim the beginning if need be. But and then also sometimes people, if they're jumping in early, then they can catch the pre-conversations. Sometimes you get some funny random stuff. So, all right, here we go in three, two, one. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast, a podcast to promote and improve your practice as an athletic trainer. Ed had reached out to me probably a year or two ago asking just about being a dad and athletic trainer. And then just recently, after the virtual NATA chats, Ed asked about a follow-up conversation or maybe a series about AT dads. And so this is kind of where this came from. So Ed's joining me as well. Joel is a new dad, and actually once we click over to his camera on the live stream, you'll see he's got his baby right there with him in the podcast, and he's gonna have to walk out, put her down for a nap, and then come back and join us as well. So that's part of being an AT dad, so it just fits perfectly. But we've got Larry Cooper. He's retired. He has kids, grandkids, and he's been active and involved in their life throughout his career as an athletic trainer. And so we're going to give him some key questions that we want answered, and we, hopefully can guide us. And he's going to share his story of kind of what his life as an athletic trainer and a dad and a husband and as a grandfather look like, and answer those questions for us. So if you're joining live, make sure you post those chats or comments there, and I'll do my best to get them answered. And if not, then you can always reach out towards Larry at the end. This is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/ATDads. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/ATDads. I am Jeremy Jackson, the host, and it's a pleasure to have you on. So, Larry, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. Joel, say hello and show off your baby.
It's Joel, and this is Ella joining the pre-nap. So.
Oh, she's playing shy. All right, and then Ed.
Morning, everyone. I'm Ed Wazenkevich up in Castleton, Vermont.
There we go. So I didn't mention everybody where they're from, everything like that, but we'll kind of get to that. But you also, if you've been listening to the Sports Medicine Broadcast and you've heard from Ed and Joel and Larry all before, so they're all on there. They'll have their bio information on there. So, Ed, what do you want to know from Larry?
So my thing is my son's almost 2, and so since he's been born, I had paternity leave for 2 months last fall in 2019, and then I was only back at work for 2 months before COVID shut everything down. So I feel like since my son hasn't been born, I haven't experienced having to balance out being a father and an athletic trainer as much, and that's probably one of the blessings that have come out of COVID-19. But I'm more concerned when I get back into a more normal routine as an athletic trainer, the challenges I'm going to face in balancing parenthood with athletic training with the demands as an athletic trainer.
I think you're very fortunate to have been able to take that time off when he was a newborn. I did not have that opportunity, so that's awesome for you. I think that just like any other priority in your life, you need to make that time, and you have to have some very hard boundaries, whether it be, you say with your significant other that you're not going to miss birthdays, or every particular one day a week you're going to do something different with the family. You've got to prioritize and make sure that you have those hard boundaries and stick with it. We all know that our life is very tumultuous when it comes to schedules and stuff like that. So that might be hard to do, like the same day every week or the same activity. But, you've got to be able in your mind to draw that line to say, hey, listen, I'm making the effort. I'm making the opportunities to spend time with my child. And I can't back down on that. there were some times when I was working by myself. I was a full-time teacher and an athletic trainer. And so my days were 12, 14, 16-hour days, depending on the activities. And there was times where I couldn't get away. And my wife knew that, and she was very supportive of that. But when there was an opportunity for me to get away and be a part of their, my children's activities, oh, I was there. I mean, for me, I was just telling Jeremy, working out is a priority for me. That's something I do every day. I get up in the morning early before, everybody else and get that in. And I think that if you're having trouble with balancing that time, maybe in the evening, do your other work in the morning, or vice versa. If you want to spend time in the morning with your son, get up early with him, uninterrupted time if you can, even if it's 15 minutes. But those little shots of time are very, very important for you for that balance, because we are tugged many different ways. And you're tugged, man, I want to spend more time with what's your son's name?
It's Desmond.
Desmond. You want to spend more time with Desmond, but your job doesn't permit it. You might want to go and say, hey, to your AD and say, hey, listen, there's a conditioning session, and how far away do you live from your school?
I'm about a half hour.
Okay. So maybe that's not an opportunity, but I live 5 minutes. I'd say, hey, listen, I'm going to shoot home, for half an hour, and I'll be right back. And all it was, a weightlifting session or a chalk talk or something like that. So, I think that most ADs and most administrators have family too, and they're willing to work with you if you're not putting your patient's healthcare at risk. So it's just a priority, just like in life. Some people have a priority of getting on social media all the time or going to the bars or whatever. It's tough now during the pandemic, but you just got to make that priority what it is.
All right, Joel, I know you're about to have to head out. So what is one of the key questions that you hope to kind of get answered here? And then again, we'll kind of work through Larry's timeline from the beginning of his AT story.
Yeah, I guess for me, is how understanding of a significant other do you have to have in order to, do that? I've seen my hours shift all over the place, just even before the pandemic and whatnot. Obviously, that changed somewhat with getting married and whatnot. But my significant other, not being a huge sports person, doesn't always quite get, where we're at, where we're coming from. So just any insight there.
Well, I can tell you, is it a daughter? Beautiful, Emma, yeah. By the way. My wife sounds on the very outside like yours. She was very non-athletic, and she understood what I did, but I don't think she fully understood when we got married. And then you just, when you show them, I used to sit down on a Sunday and say, this is what I got going on this week. This is, when we have an opportunity to do this, and this. And, I think that it goes sometimes without being said that our spouses have to be understanding in our profession. And I couldn't have done half the things I did in my profession, in my job, if it wasn't for my wife. She's been an amazing supporter, and it just takes some time to educate them, just like we have to educate the parents that that we deal with, and the coaches and the athletes and stuff. You gotta do the same thing with your spouse, especially if they don't truly understand what an athletic trainer does and why they have to be there so many gosh darn hours.
All right, so I think that's a great question to start us off. I want to start back there in the beginning. You wrestled in high school, and then did you wrestle in college?
I did.
You wrestled in college, so the athletics is truly part of who you are, what you're doing, right? And you completely understand that life. So tell me a little bit more about when you started in athletic training, and then when you met your wife, and then we're going to kind of continue on your athletic training story up until present day interjecting these questions, but tell us how it all started, Larry.
Well, I went to a small school in my hometown. I was a townie. Yeah, I lived at home and went to school for 2 years, and then I had to get away. I had to break away from home and spread my wings, and I transferred to the University of Pittsburgh. And um, my original intention in college was to be an architect or an engineer, and man, I don't know, I got completely away from that. And the first 2 years I took accounting classes, and I just could not see myself as a suit and tie behind a desk person. So I started exploring different ways where I could be active and also enjoy my chosen profession. And I come from my family. I think my mom and dad were good at helping people and improving their lives and stuff, volunteering and that. And I think that I had that, shown to me many times over. And so I had an uncle that suggested I go into athletic training, and I asked him why, and he said, well, because you're active, you like athletics, and this is a way to give back to people in medicine. And so I transferred to University of Pittsburgh and took general courses the first semester, and then I enrolled in their athletic training program, and the rest is history. I fell in love with it, absolutely fell in love with it. And then my last semester, back then they called it field experience, and I was doing my student teaching and my field experience at the same school, Baldwin High School. And I was working with the girls basketball team, and they had a very good girls basketball team. We had a playoff game, went to the playoff game, and this young lady walked by me and kind of caught my eye, and sat down in the stands, and like a goofball, she caught me staring at her a few times. And after the game, one of the teammates, the players wanted to introduce me to someone. It just so happened it was her. And the first thing she said to me, so you're the dumb jock. And just, if you ever think of a cartoon with a, being mad, I was livid. I couldn't believe this person was saying this to me. And I guess something inside me said, oh, I'll prove you wrong. And within a couple of weeks, I saw her at a playoff game a couple days later. And then again, a couple days later, we started talking, and not long after that, we started dating, and the rest is history. I had her at Dumb Jock.
All right, so kind of continue on. You said she was not athletic, and she was there at the game watching. So kind of, was she there as like a big sister? What was happening there?
Neighbor. The girl was her neighbor that was playing, and they were very close. And she, I say my wife's not athletic. She was not into athletics. That's probably the best way to describe her. She just, I always say I get my culture from other places than yogurt now since I met her. She listens to classical music, where I was probably listening to Boston and AC/DC. She was reading classical novels and things like that, where I was, reading short articles and newspapers, and that's it. So she kind of balanced. It's amazing, how she balanced me out. I truly think, and this is the honest to God truth, right before I met her, I went to the Sugar Bowl with University of Pittsburgh, and they gave us all kinds of money. Even though they provided meals, they gave us a significant amount of money back then. And I came home with very little money, and I spent most of it on alcohol. And I think that if I wouldn't have met my wife when I met her, I probably would have gone down a terrible path. That's the guys I hung around with. That's what we did. And she took me in a completely different direction. And I'm so blessed for that, for so many reasons. But Yeah, she's opposite in many ways of me, but very similar in other ways. And I guess that's what they say, opposites attract. She's an amazing lady. Put up with me for this long. Holy cow, 36 years.
36 years. So I think one of the important things is, I know we're talking about AT dads and we're talking about kids, but the biggest piece of being a successful dad is raising your kids to be successful members or productive members of society. And if I don't love my wife, if I don't, and if you're divorced, if you don't love your child's mother as an AT dad, then that kid is going to grow up with that damage as well. And so one of the biggest things you can do is just listen to Larry's story about how he met his wife, how he loved his wife, how, and how that's grown, how they've communicated. So it's really important to not skip over this part with his wife. All right. So you met her there in your, I think, did you say your senior year of college?
Yep.
Yeah. So your senior year of college. Now tell me, keep us going from there. Y'all met, you married. Where'd you get your first job, and how did that look when you first started your life together as a teacher, athletic trainer, and a husband?
So my first job was in Arlington, Virginia. I was the first certified athletic trainer in Arlington County. I actually had a really amazing opportunity there to develop their athletic trainer job description and their teaching responsibilities and things like that. But what happened is I moved down there and we got married about 7 months later in November over Thanksgiving break. And, we have, as athletic trainers, sometimes you have a break over Thanksgiving, and we fit it in. And then we started off in Arlington, and she worked for the public schools as well in the HR department. And we'd go every night. She'd come to the games and wrestling matches and football games, and we became very close friends with a coach. His name is Sam, and his wife Marisa. There's to this day our best friends. But after every game or after every match or whatever the case, we'd probably go out and get something to eat or just talk, shoot the breeze, and you get to know each other. And I gotta be honest with you, we moved. I'm originally from north of Pittsburgh, about 2 hours. So Arlington, Virginia was 6 hours away from my parents, and it was 4 hours away from her parents. And that really brought us closer together because we relied on each other. We didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody when I moved down there. She obviously knew me after we got married, but it made us depend on each other and really lean on each other from day one. Once we got married, we didn't have kids for almost 5 years, and we did a lot of traveling. We did a lot of things together, and I think that really forged our relationship in a positive way. I know that sometimes that doesn't always work that way, but I think spending all that time together. She also got a job at the same school I was teaching at then. She was a secretary, and I was teaching health and phys ed and also being the athletic trainer. And she worked in the office. So we got to see each other quite a bit, probably more than most married couples do. And it's always been very positive and never had any issues. Well, then we had a child, Sarah. She was born April 8th of 1990. And I'll tell you what, I was scared, but it was probably one of the best things that happened to me. It really kind of finalized my, I don't know if that's the right word to say, but it just gave me an opportunity to be a dad, and something I wanted to be for a long period of time. Really cemented my thoughts and beliefs in what I wanted to do with my life. And I think it's probably been the most important job, the most rewarding job I've ever had, is being a dad. It's difficult when they're young because you don't see some of the things that you're going to see later. But I spent I'm not a bar guy. I'm not a TV guy. So anytime I wasn't at work, I was with my family and my daughter. And then we moved back to Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh at Harrison City, Pennsylvania, and started working in a clinic and then in a high school as well. And I had the mornings free, so I would do everything I could with my wife and my daughter, whether it would be, teaching her the alphabet, or, teaching her the numbers, or, whatever the case may be. And I got the job at Penn Trafford teaching and doing the athletic training. Didn't have as much time, but I had a delayed start. And right about that time, my daughter was going to daycare. So I would take her to daycare on my way to work. It was preschool. It wasn't daycare, it was preschool. And every day we had a routine and we do certain things. And I taught him to count by fives, and I taught him to count by tens, and I taught him, multiplication and stuff like that. At a very early age, we just had this routine. We get in the car and I'd buckle them in, and I'd go 1, 5, 10, 15, 20. And then I'd hear her say 5, 10, 15, 20, and we just kept on doing that. And then we get up to 100, and then I'd say, okay, let's count by threes. And, we start, so by the time she started kindergarten, she was, I don't want to say she was advanced, but I had exposed her to, some things that maybe some parents hadn't. And I think probably because I was a teacher as well, I was doing that. About that time, my second daughter, Molly Ann, she was born on January 25th of 93. She came into our life, and she's so funny. Like when she was little, she would just make us laugh all the time. And she has a very contagious laugh. Have you ever heard those babies on television that you have to laugh? And that's the way she was. She was always that way. So I just doubled down and spent more time at home as much as I could. I was fortunate right about that time to have another athletic trainer join me on staff. So what we would do is we would, share responsibilities at night. If there was multiple events, obviously I was there, but if there was only one event at night, we would take turns. And that was very beneficial in, my duties as a dad. And then my youngest daughter, Delaney Elise, was born in 97, and we had 2 other full-time athletic trainers at the time. Delaney she's a character. She's our jokester. And so it made me, like, having her and having Molly and having Sarah, I was laughing all the time. Life is good. And man, I was busy, and I was involved in our state association. I was coaching soccer, all these different things, but life was good. And then before you know it, they're in high school, and I have them as students. I have them in the classroom. I have them as athletes. They're working with me in the athletic training room. And I had an opportunity to have some really funny circumstances pop up, and I had some really, down to earth conversations with them. And then I had some awesome times with them, traveling with them to playoff games and different things. I got to tell you a story. This is a great story. All my daughters ran cross country. All of them played volleyball. All of them played soccer. And at cross country, I think it was Molly's senior year, during practice, they used to run around the school, and they'd see me in the back with football, and they'd always come by the water boy, and Molly would say, "Hey, Dad, can we get a drink?" I'd say, "Of course," and they stand there getting a drink with a couple of her friends, and this new lineman for football, he just moved to the school. He comes over to me, he says, "Hey, Coop, do you know that blonde there?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you think you could introduce me?" I went, "No." I should have played with him a little bit, but I didn't. I said, "No." He says, "Why not, man? She's pretty girl. I'd like to get to know her." I go, "She's my daughter." And the rest of the team knew what was going on, and they were laughing their butts off. They thought it was so funny, but those are circumstances that most dads don't have with their kids. You know, it was a lot of fun. No, at dinner that night, I remember talking about it. They were laughing. I should have had more fun with it. I should have pulled him along a little bit, but I didn't.
All right. So I want to go back to Ed's question. He said he's been in quarantine and hasn't really had to create that balance. I did a podcast years ago about doing FMLA whenever, or taking paternity leave like Ed did. And that was part of how we started that conversation was Ed felt guilty about taking that paternity leave. So with you as a full-time teacher, as an athletic trainer, your firstborn, and this is back in 1990, so it's not really, you need to be macho, right? You're the man, you go to work. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what that looked like when Sarah, your first, was born and how you were present in those first 2 months before summer break. Oh, looks like Larry froze. Ed, Joel, you guys with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So we'll get back to Larry in just a second. So, Ed, what other questions do you have for Larry? You can get those ready and ask him when he comes back in. But
I mean, the only other question I had, he pretty much answered about how he increased quality time with his daughters throughout their childhood and adolescence.
all right. So in your career so far, you said Desmond is 2.
He's gonna be 2 in April.
He's about to be 2. Okay, so coming up on 2. So what have you done to prioritize or set those non-negotiables or communicate with your wife saying, hey, this is my schedule for the week, or hey, this day we'll go on a date, or whatever it is? What have you done in that?
So I haven't really done anything. Like, I go over the schedule with my wife and she fully understands what I do, but I haven't had to do that prioritizing just yet, just because it really hasn't needed to happen. Where it's like I'm not in the stress of being in season where a coach wants us to come in on a day off because we have injured athletes, which that's becoming a non-negotiable anyways. But yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to have this conversation, because I know that day's coming and I want to be ready for it. So
Hey, Joel, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So actually, I know this is kind of one of the big things that Joel is working on, is that leadership, that communication. He's in a college setting similar to you. So while we're still waiting for Larry to come back in to the Zoom, Joel, why don't you talk about some of the things that you're doing at UWL and how that can help Ed set those boundaries, make those non-negotiables, have those hard conversations to prioritize that time with family.
Yeah, so I haven't had to deal with it quite yet with the little ones because of the pandemic as well, but something that our staff has been working on, irrespective of children, but we were very fortunate for many years to have some collection of 10 certified athletic trainers on staff. That was GAs, that was some part-times, that switched over a little bit. We had some from work, some ATs in our docs clinic coming down, so we could really make it where you either had split seasons, so you were just fall and spring, or you just had a season and then kind of helped out. So we were able to really balance things really well. Well, that's kind of fallen apart a little bit, and we've dropped down to a staff of 6. And basically, I've taken it to my AD for my role and just saying, if we're going to drop down that far with no additional support and all of our head coaches are now full-time, that's all they do, and then they have a full-time assistant combined, whatever it may be, the services are going to have to go with it. And so we sat down as a staff and tried to look, what is our most valuable commodity to the athletic department, and that is the treatment and the rehab. And it's not necessarily always sitting at a practice every night, for an ankle sprain, which is ultimately going to be there tomorrow. And it's probably not going to be significantly different. And we're fortunate enough that we've got a couple people that live really close to campus that could pop in if they need to. We've got a younger staff, except for one who's got 3 kids, a couple in high school. And that was really the eye opening thing for me is he had arranged his schedule to attend one of his kids' things. And then something changed with the head coach with the team he was working with. And all of a sudden, the head coach had to rearrange his schedule so he could now attend one of his kids' things, which caused the athletic trainer to miss his. Well, him didn't get that information until 24 hours before. And we said, we aren't going to cover it. There wasn't enough communication on time. It wasn't communicated sufficiently, and we don't have the people to do that. And those have been hard conversations. I know this will probably be a relatively unpopular opinion within the athletic training realm about not necessarily being there for every single thing, but I had come in for football treatments on a Sunday for an hour and a half that had continued to get redone. That if people didn't show up right at the time we opened, or if they came in and all they talked about was the night before, we were going to cancel them, and we made it through the year. But then again, this year that was going to be my kind of cutoff point. If you got something that happened during the game, you talk to me afterwards. We come up with a plan, and I'll see you first thing Monday morning. Just because most of them were going to go out Saturday night anyway, and not really help their injury to begin with. So those haven't been fun conversations, but they've been ones that have been necessary, and it's putting pressure in a good way, I think, to our administration to try and help solve the problem. If you want the same treatment that our coaches, are able to give, then hire me as staff that would allow me to do that. And I'm not asking necessarily 1-to-1. We've got 21 sports. I'd love 21 athletic trainers, but I get it. But if we can make it split where people can take a season off, then that's what we need to do. And that's been one I've looked at it was going to happen this year. It didn't because of COVID. I would be all of football, covering half of our home basketball games, and then every single track meet. I don't know that that's a work setting that I'm prepared to be in, and that's where I applaud secondary school ATs, because I don't know how you all do it. It's impressive, and I applaud them. I don't know how that would happen. And also knowing how our track meets go, they are never just on, as it with most track meets, rarely on time. But that's kind of the approach we've taken. It's been met with obvious resistance, but we feel like we've been justified in it, and I think we do a really good job, and we'll see what happens.
I'm kind of sore today because yesterday I worked out, right? So if I don't ever go push against something hard, then I'm never going to get any better, any stronger. And so we just have to make sure that we're willing to push and be sore and get that feedback. We just have to, again, do it in a good way. And I know that Joel's had some leadership podcasts, and he's done it with, he had Rick, and he's gone through this series. Obviously, we had ours with Seco, talking about how we can have those conversations. But I think Larry is back with us. Larry, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened there, but I'm using my hotspot right now. So.
All right. So I just asked about your first child, Sarah, being born 1990. Did we finish that conversation, or you're
No, you actually started to freeze at that point in time. I think my internet went down. So.
All right. So tell me what that looked like for you. April 1990. Your first daughter's born. You're a teacher, athletic trainer. How did you prioritize those first month or two? Because you can never ever get those back. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I think that I had a very supportive administration, not only from my direct supervision, but also from the superintendent on down. And Arlington County is a very large school district. It's not, like a small rural school district. We had, I think it's four high schools, 7 middle schools, and 27 or 28 elementary schools in a 5 square mile radius, very densely populated. Very, you know, if you ever been to Washington D.C., you've been to Arlington. You know, it's right there. So getting to the administration, they were very supportive, very family oriented for a school district that size. And I'll give you an example. I had a staff meeting with all the phys ed teachers, and our superintendent, Dr. Arthur Gosling, was there presenting to us about what he'd like to see us do in the coming years, and you know how he foresees phys ed fitting into the educational process. And I can feel myself, you know, getting tired because I hadn't got much sleep in that, you know, and I'm going, and I hit my head on the table, and he walked up to me. He says, "Coop, you're lucky I know you just had a baby, because otherwise I'd be mad." You know, it was just, so I think, you know, that shows how supportive he was to some degree. And, you know, my wife was a stay-at-home mom for as long as we possibly could. We prioritized that. And my wife and I did that. That was on purpose. We went without new furniture. We went without going out to eat, things like that, so she could stay home and really spend time with Sarah. And we continued that. But getting to those first few weeks, I mean, we still had, you know, I had events. She was born April 8th. That was right in the middle of spring sports. And I was able to return to do everything I was supposed to, you know, contractually, and, you know, fulfill my duties and that. Maybe not to the best of my professionalism, professionally what I thought, but I did everything that was asked of me. I did everything that I could possibly do, and still spend some time with my daughter and help out my wife, because as you know, after giving birth, you know, there's complications, there's little things that go on, and they're not able to lift or be as mobile as they usually are. So I was you know, it was a juggling act, but I was able to do it, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think that it's very, very important that as a spouse, as a dad, that that was my priority, to be there. And I think sometimes that we get caught up saying, you know, I have to do this for school. If I don't do that, they're going to be upset, or I could lose my job. I think that they're more understanding than what we give them credit for. I think that sometimes a conversation has to be had. You know, Joe, I heard you saying you had some conversations with your administration. Those are tough. That's like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. You know, sometimes you have to. Those conversations, those tough conversations, are something that are very, very necessary, not only for you, but also for them too, because they don't know what you're thinking and what you're going through until you talk to them. It's that simple, you know, and when we're young, that's a very daunting task to try and bring that kind of stuff up to your administration. I mean, that's not an easy conversation at all.
So let me jump in. We have 3 biological and then 1 foster daughter. And so my first son was born on a Friday, and then I went to work on Monday. So he was born at the end of July. We started back to work like August 1st. And for me, it was like, okay, well, I'm just tired. You know, I can get through it. It's kind of like half days. It's getting everything ready, getting the students ready, getting the year ready. So I need to be here at the beginning of the year, when there was already an athletic trainer that had been here for 20-something years, you know, 30 years or whatever it was at that point. So it's not like I needed to be here, but I felt like I had to be here. I was like, okay. Well, there was issues, and I've said it before. My wife was breastfeeding our first son, sitting in the room about 15 feet from me. I was washing the dishes so that she didn't have to do it, and she was mad because I wasn't sitting there right beside her, right? Like you said, there's complications. Things are different. Hormones change. It's right. The biological process. It's the way it works. And it wasn't her fault. That was just how she was feeling. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't feeling or understanding any of that. So again, I share that story just because a guy doesn't experience those same hormones and emotions and changes, he doesn't understand unless he specifically has heard that story, ask his wife, they discuss it. And so then with the second one, he was born in the beginning of July, had all July to take off before I had to go back to work. So with the third one, born in November, I had planned, I'd said, hey, when my last child is born, I'm going to take off for 2 weeks no matter what. Like, I'm just going to take off. And then for the rest of the time before the Christmas break, I'm going to take a half day. So I'll come in the morning, I'll do this stuff in the morning, and then I'm going to go home and help, because it's really tough with 3 kids at home. None of them were in school yet. So I learned as I went, right? And was able to prioritize that time and have that hard conversation. But any new dads, you need to have those conversations with your team right now, with your admin, with whoever it is, and say, hey, I need that time at home. Those first 2 weeks, what do we need to do? What do we need to plan right now so that those first 2 weeks or month or whatever it is that you can take, that I can be home full time supporting, helping my wife and my child, because I can never, ever, ever get those first 2 weeks or month back. There will always be another day at work. There will always be another job. There will always be another deal. There will always be another game, but I can never get those days back with my kid.
And that's hard. That's hard to instill or impress upon a younger athletic trainer who's a new dad or a new mom, because, new dad basically, because they don't understand that you're never going to get that time back. And, and it's important that you show that support for your spouse. But it's also important that you make the effort, the time to go ahead and spend that time with them. Speaking of the devil.
All right. So that was 1990. Your first daughter was born. You were working in a family-oriented school. So then kind of continuing on down the line, Joel asked, about his wife. Isn't really into sports. You said your wife wasn't either. She was able to attend the games before y'all had kids. What are some of the things that you continue to do to include your wife and your kids in your job, and you be part of theirs, besides the obvious advantage you had of working at the high school that they were attending?
Well, we did a thing called, and my daughters still do this. We did this thing called Pizza Friday. So every Friday night they would come up to the athletic training facility and we would have pizza. And, my wife obviously is the one who transported them up, packed them all up, brought them up to the athletic training facility. But, that was a tradition that we had every Friday night. And what's really interesting is I know at least my oldest daughter, and who has she has a daughter, they still do that pizza, Friday pizza. And so it's been, just one of those traditions we did. And then when they were in the high school and they were working as student athletic trainers with me, my wife would bring us up to dinner, and she would, sometimes stand there and chat with us. And, we talk about our day just like we would if we were sitting around the dinner table. We always took time to talk about each other's day and things like that. So I think that, and this goes back to your question, Joel, about your spouse. Yes, they've got to be very understanding. They've got to be willing to make that effort, just like you have to be willing to make the effort to do things with them, whether it be, if you have a night off, you're spending it at home with them doing things rather than going out with your buddies or doing axe throwing or going, whatever the thing is, you're making the effort, on their end too. So it all goes back to what your priorities are. Like I said from the beginning, if working out in the morning is your priority, you'll make it, and you'll make the effort to do it. If your priority is watching Friends every night, and you have a slot of time that you want to watch, you'll make the effort. But if you want to spend time with your children, if you want to develop those relationships, if you want to really solidify your job as a dad, you'll make that priority. So we did the pizza Fridays. That was one thing we always did. That was we. I mean, I have pictures of us in the athletic training facility when they were very, very little. That they're sitting at the treatment tables just waiting for a slice of pizza. it was always fun.
Yeah, I have several pictures of my kids up here. My wife will bring the kids up here at times. Actually, I presented not this COVID summer, but the one before. I presented in Louisiana at the Louisiana Athletic Trainers Association conference meeting, symposium, whatever it's called, and I took my oldest son with me, and he actually was part of the presentation. So we had gone through and practiced, and he was the one clicking the slides for me. But again, that was me being willing to take my son, because it would have been easier to go without him. It would have been easier for me to hang out and do whatever without him. But I was wanting and willing to involve them in my life. So I took him with me, presented, we practiced, we prepared. And so it's been really those kind of moments you can't ever get back. Like for the athletic trainers there, they liked it. They thought it was cute. And he was able to answer a couple of questions about what he liked, because I was presenting about technology. So it was something that he didn't need to have an expertise, and just involving him and like just seeing him shine. And he actually chose to like wear a snap-on tie and a vest. Like he chose his outfit. So he dressed up for the event. And a year later, he was presenting something to us, because it was like they wanted to buy Minecraft. And so they created a PowerPoint presentation on why they should buy Minecraft. And the way that he presented that was the same way that I presented at that conference. And again, it's because he went there, he practiced that presentation with me. And so then he's just repeating that style that he saw and that he heard and that he was a part of, because I was willing to be uncomfortable and prioritize my job as a dad, rather than being off somewhere else presenting and taking care of other people's kids and other athletic trainers.
Yeah, I do a lot of wrestling weight certification presentations in the state of Pennsylvania. I've probably given over 100 of them, and my daughters traveled with me to those, and saw me actively engaged in something that I was passionate about. And I would say that between that and having them in the classroom for my sports medicine class, and then also having them in physical education class and health class, and they saw what I did and how passionate I am, and all three of them are teachers now. And I would say that's probably because of their exposure to me, but also to some other very, very good teachers that had a positive influence on them. So yeah, it's amazing, those little things that you did, Jeremy, that he'll remember that forever. Because there's some things that I've done that my daughters will remember, and I forget all about that, or if you involve them. All three of my daughters are very good at the spoken word, the written word. And so what I would do is, if I had a presentation to do, or a speech, I would do what I thought was a good thing, and I'd say, so what do you guys think of this? And they would look through it and they'd say, oh, Dad, that's really good, but you need to change this. So if you involve them, sometimes it makes you a better person too. It sounds better, but also you're developing that relationship with them. So yeah, I had so many opportunities, more than most parents do, with their children, and I'm very fortunate and very blessed for that.
So Ed and Joel, I'm going to come back to you in just a second and ask, what are you going to take away from this to incorporate your family and work? Because it's not just like a work-life balance, it's a life balance, right? So what are you going to do? What are you going to take away from this? So Larry, kind of continuing on, you have grandkids. What are you doing to continue that relationship and include your granddaughter in your life, or being an active part of their life now?
Okay, I'll get to that, but if I could back up 1 second. Right. One thing I forgot to tell you guys, working at the secondary school, I didn't have off 3 months in the summer. You know how it works. with athletic training, you don't have that much time off. But I had an opportunity to travel some in the summer. And so what we would do, we really didn't do anything during the school years, but in the summer we would plan camping trips. We would plan trips to go different parts of the country. In one trip, we were gone for 7.5 weeks. We traveled to 22 different states. I had a pop-up camper, and we all had our specific duties when you pull into a campsite to do. And when we were getting ready to leave, we all had our specific duties and stuff. But I got to be honest with you, that those camping trips that we did really were so helpful with the family dynamic. When I was planning, I would ask them, okay, so this is where we're going to be. Why don't you guys investigate what there is, something that you want to do in those areas? And here's a prime example. We were near Chicago, and I wanted to go see the Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field. And they wanted to see American Girl doll place, and we did both. It just one of those things that you kind of that give and take. And that was the same trip, Joel, that we went up to the bluff up there. But there's things that you have to do. It can't always be about you. It has to be about them too. That's that priority that you've made. So my granddaughter just had her second birthday. We went down and spent a couple days with her for her birthday. And, it's funny, the little things you do. Taught her how to high five, fist pump and high five. Little things that now whenever I see her, the first thing she does is, and I'm Papa, and my wife is Mimi, and Papa, Mimi, and it's time that everything is focused on her. And I feel so energized, so refreshed when I come back, because I spent time with, something that's so amazing. Having grandkids is so different than having kids. I'm sure you've heard that before, and it's hard for me to explain why, but man, they're so innocent and they're so inquisitive. And when you get older, you have a different perspective on that. And so it's really neat to watch them. But I think the biggest thing is watching your children interact with them and see how they're raising them. And, certainly you're going to see things that you did, and you're going to see things that you didn't do. But it's so incredible to see, your now 30-year-old daughter interact and raise her child beyond words. It's amazing. And I'm fortunate to be able to live close enough. We live about 4 hours away. It's not, it's not too far, 4 hours away, and be able to, if we want to, go down and just pop in for a weekend or 5 or 6 days or whatever the case may be. But spending the time with her, and when you're there, not being distracted by, a football game or, something else you got to do. Matter of fact, I was doing some projects at their house with their husband, and I said, well, can we do that when she's taking a nap, or can we do that after she goes to sleep? It's something like that, because I wanted to spend time with her. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing my time with her, not only for me, but for her. I think it's important. There's studies that show that children that grow up around their grandparents are better connected with the entire community. They have a better sense of community. So I think that, I don't know, I have a different perspective now than I did when I was, your age, Ed and Joel and Jeremy, and I think it happens. It evolves over those years, and it's a good thing it does, because you don't want to stay the same. I'm not the same person I was when I met my wife, and I'm glad. I'm sure she's glad too.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. I am not the same person, and that is a good thing. So, all right, Ed, Joel, what are you going to change, implement, take away from Larry, or what final question do you have for Larry?
Joel, you want me to start?
Go
Okay.
for it.
I mean, I think hearing your stories about the pizza night in the athletic training room, I mean, I posted this question a few weeks ago that like I can't wait for my son to get to that age where he can be somewhat helpful on a sideline, like if it's filling up water bottles. Like I can't wait for when it's game day on a Saturday morning. I bring him in, he helps me set up the locker room, he's helping on the sideline. And then as he gets older, and if he still likes it, maybe join me on the road for a trip and experience that and just try and maximize my time with him while I still have to do my job as well and share those experiences.
I'm gonna tell you what, it's an amazing experience when you can do that. I'm very hopeful that you can do that, and it'll be positive in more ways than you can ever imagine. Those incidental ways. Yeah. I was smiling because I remember when they first started, helping out, and that just the little things, and they feel so special to be on the sideline, or they feel so special to be able to help someone out. And usually the athletes are very accommodating and treat them like royalty, you know, like they are doing something very special, when in fact it's the athletes who are treating them very special.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good, Ed. Now, I don't wish your life away, but yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
fun when you can do that. It will be absolutely amazing.
yeah. I'm always telling myself, life's what happens when you're busy making plans, just like John.
Yeah, one of the things though too that I was a little difficult for me, and I don't mean me, for my daughters. I think being in the same school, I think that they maybe missed out on some dating, because maybe the guys thought I was a little intimidating. I mean, if you know me, I'm not, but when you're young and you're uninformed or impressionable, you might think that I was a tyrant. I wasn't. Matter of fact, my daughters had people say, "Does your dad make you do push-ups when you swear?" Things like that, because that was a policy in my classroom. If you swore in phys ed, you had to do push-ups. You had a choice. You could either do push-ups or go to the office. And all but one kid over 30 some years did elected to do push-ups. So they thought that I was the same way at home. Well, I'm not. To that same degree, though, I think, and there was an article in Training Conditioning a few years ago. They asked me to get my daughter's perspective on being a trainer and being the teacher that they had, and it blew me away. They said it was a positive experience. There was no negatives, and that they would do it again if they had the opportunity. So I think that you've got to create those opportunities, and you got to make sure you're a dad when you're supposed to be a dad, a teacher when you're supposed to be a teacher, an athletic trainer when you're supposed to be an athletic trainer, and make sure that you don't confuse those responsibilities at the wrong time, because that can make it bad. I think that um, one more story before we go to Joel is, I had a fellow teacher, and this was the last week of school. Molly, my middle daughter's senior year, she come up to me and she goes, "Coop, is Molly your daughter?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she goes, "I never knew that. I've had her in class all 4 years. And I never knew that." And I said, "That was what I wanted." And she kind of looked at me like all kind of weird ways. And I said, "I didn't want you to treat her differently, better, different, or worse. I wanted her to be treated like every other person in your classroom. And I didn't want kids to think, oh, she's getting special treatment because her dad's Coop, you know?" And so that was kind of a affirmation to me that I was separating all of my jobs, parent, teacher, athletic trainer, and not trying to muddy the water. That also happened with my youngest daughter as well. But yeah, I think, it's tough being a parent because it's so easy to step in when they're failing or they're having difficulty, but it's the best thing when you step back and let them deal with it. And that's what I tried to do all the time. And we'd have discussions at home, and they say, Dad, why didn't you do this? I said, because that's your responsibility, and that's how you grow up, that's how you learn. And now they come back and they say, yeah, now I understand why you did that, and we appreciate you doing being that way. But that's tough as a dad, that you can see things going on that it's so much faster, so much easier if you jump in, but it's not the best thing to do. Sorry about my stories.
That's why we're here. Joel?
Yeah, I think for me, and this just kept reaffirming it. I don't remember where I heard this, but it is, jobs will come and go, but families forever. And I can't say a couple years ago, pre getting married and, pre everything, that I would have embraced that. But how quick that evolution has happened, and just kind of reaffirming that, and, that's always going to be a struggle of, do you move on to something else? Does it make sense to what, how do you balance it out? But working on becoming completely at peace with knowing and understanding that has been big for me. And this just kept reaffirming those things and figuring out what's going to be the best way to make sure that, as you guys have both said, life doesn't pass you by and you miss out because you were just sitting there while a film session was going on doing nothing.
Right. Yeah. And phones are, these things are definitely changing the world. And my wife and I were at some get together a number of years ago, and everybody but her and I were on the phone, and everybody was a little bit younger and kind of grew up with the phones. I didn't grow up with, I call it an electronic leash. And I believe that. Now, granted, it's important. Like, for example, right now I'm using my hotspot on it for us to do this. For some reason, our internet's down, but it's good. It's important. It's useful. But I think too many people spend so much time on it. They forget about what's going on in front of them. And your generation grew up with these, so you need to step away from it. You need to remove apps so you're not on it, things like that. Sometimes my oldest daughter said she removed Facebook from her phone so that she's not tempted to get on it, and she removed Instagram, things like that, so that she said it's a black hole that you get in and you just can't get out. And then TikTok came and she said the same thing. I said, well, life is full of choices, honey. You gotta decide. So she spends more time with her daughter and less time on her phone.
That is beautiful way to end right there. You gotta spend more time with the kids, less time on your phone, less time at the job. Prioritize, like Larry said, have those hard conversations, think and plan. Know that if you don't have kids, that if you're planning on it, like if it's your spouse is pregnant, that you need that time off. You need that time there so that y'all can figure it out, so y'all can work together, so that it's not, well, I'm going to work and I'll be home this time, And so with this last one, with the foster baby, since my wife wasn't breastfeeding, we were able to, all right, well, I've got from 3 a.m. on, so if anything after 3 a.m., I'll wake up and take care of the baby. You've got, up until 3 a.m., and then we were able to split it out that way. We communicated, we figured out, because of experience, because of communication, because of me loving my wife and being willing to be tired, be sleepy, and sacrifice my comfort for her. So
If I could add one more thing, do you guys have coworkers?
Yes.
Get them, because they're in the same situation. Sometimes we overlook our needs and overlook their needs in for our needs. And I think it's important that you need to balance that out. Maybe they have a 5-year-old and they're getting into some new things with school and they need to be there for them. It's important that you don't forget that, because we don't know what they're going through. But if you communicate at work, you can make things easier with their life, and they will in turn, since you showed you care, will make your life easier with you and your children. So I think that's something that a lot of people forget about.
All right. I'm sure there's lots of questions. Again, we have a kind of a 3-part series, approaching it from 3 different angles. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Larry, what's going to be the best way to do that?
Email coopatc1@gmail.com. So COOPATC1@gmail.com.
All right, Mr. Joel.
Probably Twitter as of now. Joel_Luedtke, LUEDKE. That'll probably be the easiest way to get back.
All right. And then Ed.
Best way to get in touch with me is Twitter at Ed Waz, WOZATC.
Guys, thanks so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I've been able to maybe clear some priorities out for you, and you'll spend some more time with your kids. Joel, your daughter is beautiful. Oh my God!
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just
I'm with that.
wanna.
I'm with that. It's been, for all the downfalls of COVID, it's been a blessing to be able to spend more time with her and stuff that just probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. So we're soaking it all in.
Awesome.
All right. So I am Mr. Jeremy Jackson on most social media platforms, which I probably need to delete off my phone, according to Larry. And speaking of daddies, see how you like this transition. Speaking of daddies, Frio Hydration was one of the first ones to create the hands-free station, and I'm planning on buying some more for our watering stations for in the fall. So even if COVID is over and we don't have to worry about the no contact stuff, the hands-free watering things are awesome. The kids line up for them, but it also keeps their dirty, filthy hands off of the water nozzles, which is something that's been gross to me for years. So I really recommend the Frio Hydration hands-free water units, and so we're going to use like the last of our budget this year to buy those as we prepare for next year and the years going forward. This is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/atdads1. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/atdads1, and then I'll have a link to Joel, to Ed, to Larry, how you can get a hold of them if you can't figure it out. So for Jeremy, Larry, Ed, Joel, and the Sports Medicine Broadcast, that is a wrap. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thanks for the information and wise words.
Thanks. Yes. Travel if you can. I tell you what, that was one of the things that I think was so critical for us, is that travel time in the summer. It was really important for us.
Those long drives. Yep.
And now my wife and I just bought last summer we bought a travel trailer, and we always had a pop-up. We're a tent derivative, and now we have an enclosed, and we're going to do some more traveling as we move forward, and hopefully take our grandkids with us. So
my wife and I are actually in the market for a travel trailer.
Yeah. What kind of vehicle would you have to tow it?
I have an F-150.
Oh yeah, you're good.
So we're looking at like the ultralights, but she grew up with a camper and she did all that. I never did, but I don't think we're going to be traveling like we used to before Desmond was born. So the camper would be the next best thing.
And if she's done it before and she wants to do it, that's half the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Half the battle.